Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Silver the Hedgehog here, and I am from the likes of the Mexi Toys videos here. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll present to you our yet another new Let's Play for the channel, and this time around though, we are going back into Donkey Kong Country 2, except this time around, we're going to be tackling through a different version of the game, and as you can tell, this is the European PAL version of the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country 2. Because yeah, depending on what region you lived in, basically though, you get yourselves a different title screen depending on what region you lived in. So for instance though, I believe in the North American version, it did shows us the actual artwork that is actually based off from the Super Nintendo version artwork. So because of that though, yeah, I found it was kind of interesting. So I believe in the European PAL version, if you couldn't tell, we ended up getting the forms of the actual background based off from the cover art from Donkey Kong Land 2. So even then though, I found it was kind of interesting. So anyway, now the reason why I've decided able to tackle for this game for you guys is because not only for the fact that obviously Donkey Kong Country Returns HD is going to be on its way during at some point in around, I would say, 2 months time now, at least as far as I can recall that from the calendar's sake. But it's also about the fact that, well, since about the fact that we're now in 2024, as you know, this game right here, Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance, was expected to celebrate its 20th anniversary, because yes, this particular version did came out in 2004, which is roughly around 9 years after the release of the forms of the original Super Nintendo version back in 1995. So relatively speaking now, much like the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, basically though, it plays exactly the same, except there are some noticeable differences here and there. Like for instance though, as you can see on screen, we're able to actually access to 2 different modes, which appears to be Diddy's Dash, alongside with the forms of bonus games here and there, but let's not focus on those for right now, because obviously though, we're about to jump right into Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance version. So, and obviously, much like always, we get ourselves the file selection screen right here, and much like the forms of how it does it on the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country, I believe we do need to type our names in. So because of that though, despite the fact that unfortunately though, you only have to insert for about 3 letters, so because of that though, nothing bothered me too much though, I don't think. So either way though, now I'm really looking forward to able to actually playing for this game for you all, especially concerning for the fact that obviously though, we love playing Donkey Kong games after all, and recently though, during the forms of this year so far, we actually did manage able to tackle through a multitude of Donkey Kong games in the past, for the likes of the very beginning of 2024, all the way up to the later months. So for instance though, we've already did somehow tackle through Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, either on the Wii U or the Switch version. Mind you, we've only tackled the Switch version just because the faster loading times and additional stuff here and there, although it's a little bit minor. And on top of that, we also did manage to tackle through Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong 3. So because of that though, yeah, it seems to be more specifically though, it's about the fact that after all, we've only got about a couple of days left, and so we also decided able to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool and everything. So, and as you can tell on the actual menu selection, if you couldn't tell, once again you can able to actually play this game alone, or if you have the Game Boy Advance cable link, if I recall, you can able to actually just you know, try to tackle through 2-player mode. So either way, so for now I'm just gonna go through STH, stands for Silver the Hedgehog, or Shadow the Hedgehog, or Sonic the Hedgehog if you will, but of course no matter what though, I'm the only one who's gonna be tackling for this version today. So because of that though, yeah, I can't believe about the fact that we are basically almost done in terms of the majority of the Donkey Kong Let's Plays throughout, although there are some exceptions here and there, but either way, let's hop into Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance. So either way, yes, I do also have the original cartridge version of the game, by the way, back in 2018, and thankfully though, unlike the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong Land 2 back then, that I suffered the forms of the actual save battery problem with Donkey Kong Land 2, so I don't think that's not the case in Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance, because back then, I did somehow receive the game genuine cartridge version, along with complete box and stuff like that, even though it's a shame about the fact I know no longer have the actual physical box anymore. Plus, it's mainly because no matter what though, the condition is actually gone a little bit off, but regardless of such though, it still works very, very well. So, and of course, if you couldn't tell already, much like the forms of how it does it in the Game Boy Advance remake of Donkey Kong Country 1, basically though, as soon as you start the game, we're able to actually start things off with the opening cutscenes, able to actually know of how the story actually plays out to be. So it may look like that Donkey Kong is actually chilling at the moment, whilst Cranky Kong did somehow manage able to point out that he just complains about the fact that Donkey Kong just sits there and do nothing. Well, apart from the fact that I do know for the fact that he already did well in the first game either way, so it may look like that something is about to happen away in the skies above. So it may look like the Kremlings is up to no good again, but except this time around though, oh, there's King K. Rool, or should I say Captain K. Rool, because as you can tell, he's now in a pirate motif, so it makes sense for the sake of the this context. So, anyways though, and as far as I'm aware, I was originally trying to able to read any other dialogue here and there, but mainly because no matter what though, it's about the fact I just want to able to let you guys read for this, just to ensure for the fact that I'm not exactly the excellent reader, unlike Twilight Sparkle, as you know. So anyway though, it may look like, oh no, Donkey Kong has been kidnapped, or captured by Captain K. Rool. So it may look like about the fact that, well, just like in the Super Nintendo original version, in addition to Donkey Kong Land 2, I believe it's now time that Diddy Kong will able to rescue him, alongside with his girlfriend, Dixie Kong. So, and relatively speaking of course, Dixie Kong was first appeared in the Super Nintendo version of Donkey Kong Country 2. So either way though, and eventually at some point that she'll become a main star in terms of Donkey Kong Country 3, and as well as Donkey Kong Land 3 for, you know, the Game Boy and you name the rest. So it may look like we've come across into a letter right here, and sure enough though, is about the fact that Captain K. Rool is responsible for this. So yeah, we need to rescue Donkey Kong before it's too late. So either way though, now there are some other things worth noting for as far as this is concerned. I get the strong sense of feeling that this particular playthrough is actually going to get a lot longer in comparison to the forms of how it does in the original Super Nintendo version, alongside with the forms of Donkey Kong Land 2. That's the reason why, about the fact that I did point it out, there are some additional content that was found on the Game Boy Advance version, which we're probably not going to talk about it right now, just because we are still in the actual prologue cutscene, so just to ensure for the fact that we can able to read through any other dialogue here and there, and generally speaking, it was about the fact that, yeah, that's how the main premise of the actual plot actually plays out to be. So either way though, not to be expected, we somehow meet up with the forms of the familiar Kong members, in addition to 2 new ones. Well, if you ever played the Super Nintendo versions before, on one hand. So, for instance though, we've actually come across into Funky Kong, as well as Cranky Kong, as we know, as well as the forms of Wanky Kong, and finally Swanky Kong, which as a result though, we'll talk more about those two until for later. Well, again, if you ever seen our playthrough of Donkey Kong Country 2 before, back in 2020, in some cases the worst year we've ever experienced, you know what I'm talking about with the pandemic, alongside with the lockdown, and all that jazz. So anyway, so there's also another thing worth mentioning for, is about the fact that today's date, of course, there is the 5th of November today, in some cases in 2024 today, so it may look like about the fact that we've only just got about 2 more days left until My Luigi Brothership is going to be releasing. So because of this though, yeah, I'm sure about the fact that the reviews will be up at some point, which I'm afraid to tell you, I can't tell you for this point right about now, just because no matter what though, by the time of this particular recording session, the reviews hasn't exactly turned up yet. So, and if it does, I'll let Blaze the Cat will able to point things out, or Sonic the Hedgehog will able to point things out if he goes back onto Sonic the Hedgehog 3 standalone version. So anyway, so let's get to it with Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance version, and the first world we're going to be hop into is Gangplank Galleon, and as you can tell, the first stage we're going to be jump into is Pirate Panic. So as a result though, yeah, it may look like about the fact that we're going for exactly the same worlds as the phones of the Super Nintendo original, except now about the fact that we have less buttons to work with, much like the phones of how it does it on the, well, Donkey Kong Land 2. So either way, if you read that letter, it says the exact same information as before. Now, as far as I'm aware, there is actually a secret in here. Like, for instance, there's the banana coin right there. And the banana coins are the most important currency if you really want to go through specific parts. So either way, so yeah, if you ever experienced Donkey Kong Country before, you feel right at home with this game. Although, specifically, depending on what version of the game you're playing. So, for instance, though, it's about the fact that, as you can see, we can able to actually take control of not only with Diddy Kong, but as well as Dixie Kong as well. And generally speaking, though, if you couldn't tell from the frame rate in here and there, much like the forms of how it does it on the Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance back in last year, thanks to the forms of Ray the Flying Squirrel, did already tackle for that game back then, despite the fact that he did somehow manage able to come across into technical issues. But thankfully though, so far, it may look like we've never come across into any frame rate issues. So, oh, this is new. We actually come across into a new collectible we can get. That's what appears to be the Golden Feather. Basically what this does though, not to be confused as one of those collectibles you get, or the pickups I should say, from not only from Banjo-Kazooie, but as well as Banjo-Tooie as well, and I suppose possibly as well from Grunty's Revenge as well. So basically what this does though, again we'll talk more about that if we get onto the later progressioning for the forms of this game in particular, or should I say the later progression I should say. So either way though, and sure enough though, it's about the fact that you probably already know about the fact that Blaze is actually doing quite well so far in terms of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game so far, and generally speaking I was about the fact that, oh, don't tell me, oh, thank goodness. And yeah, just like the forms of how it does it in the original Super Nintendo version of Donkey Kong Country 2, in addition to Donkey Kong Country games in general, you can also find some bonus areas you can able to find on those specific conditions. So, for instance though, in right here, this particular bonus room will require you to be able to defeat all the enemies, and then you realize you're able to get yourselves the yet another important collectible you can get. That's what appears to be the Creme Coin. Basically, that allows you to able to actually access to one of the special worlds in this game in particular. But again, if you ever experienced the Super Nintendo version before, you might as well feel right at home, basically. Oh wow, I got myself a green balloon, which does give me 2 lives. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell, and we'll get ourselves an additional 1 up right there. So yeah, not doing too bad so far. We somehow got 10 lives so far. I mean, what to expect? Much like the forms of how it does it in the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country, it is so easy to able to get extra lives more often. So either way, and of course, just like the forms of how it does on the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country, basically though, if you see that particular completion right there, well, to be more specifically, for example, in Pirate Panic, if you see that exclamation mark right there, that actually signifies that you somehow found every single bonus areas. But if you see that hero coin, that actually signifies that you somehow, you know, got the hero coin. And finally, most notably though, if you do manage to able to collect the gold feather, then obviously the game tells you if you somehow obtain it. So, but that doesn't stop there, because much like the forms of how it does on the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country, the warp barrels does make a return. However though, the biggest difference is this time is that the screen transition is no longer disorientated, so instead it actually just warps you into a small cramped room. In addition to that, there are some additional bananas to able to spell out the exclamation mark shape, and as a result, once you leave that small room, that will pretty much take you to the end of the level straight away. So either way though, I will try my best able to find any of those warp barrels as much as I could, but for now, let's go and move on to the next level, which is Main Breeze Mayhem. So, or Main Brace Mayhem, I should say. So either way though, now, as far as I'm aware, it's about the fact that I was expecting to try to able to actually upload this and during at some point around 6 o'clock or something like that, specifically the UK time, but then I found out about the fact that Blaze did tell me there was actually a fireworks display is actually going to be happening right now, and generally speaking, it was a good thing I decided able to do a commentary on this for the likes of 5 o'clock, just before the fireworks is about to start. So either way though, just to ensure we're not going to hear that much background music, in regards to the forms of not only copyright music, but as well as the forms of loud bangs as well. So either way though, just to ensure. So anyways, there's another bonus area right here. So Of course, just like the forms of how it does it in not only for the original Super Nintendo version of Donkey Kong Country 2, but as well as the forms of the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country 1, this will be a fully 100% completion playthrough, mainly due to the fact that, well, obviously though, now we actually got ourselves some more additional stuff here and there. Like, for instance, though, we can still able to actually collect the DK Hero coins, and as well as the forms of some bonus areas we still need to try to find. And even especially noticeable, every once in a while, though, we can able to find every single gold feathers in each and every single level. Apart from bosses, though, and as far as I'm aware, that's, obviously, though, unlike the forms of how it does on the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country 1, that you notice about the fact that if you do manage to able to collect every single Kong letters in any other levels or anything else like that, like, for instance, K, O, and G letters, it actually signifies your completionist requirement on the forms of in the Game Boy Advance version of that game. I don't think that's the case this time around in Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance this time, so I suppose it really doesn't matter to the grand scheme of things when it comes to certain progression and all that jazz. So, but as you can tell right there, I just somehow lost Diddy Kong right there, but that's okay, because of course there's a DK barrel right there, so either way though. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. What was your favorite version of Donkey Kong Country 2, at least depending on what version you do prefer. You can either decide to choose the Super Nintendo version or the Game Boy Advance version. Well, mind you, if you couldn't tell already from the sprites alongside with the colors in this particular version of the game, much like the forms of how it does on the first game, in addition to the majority of the Mario Advance games in general, the colors might look a bit washed out in some form or another, and same applies with the forms of The Legend of Zelda A Link to the Past for the Super Nintendo version, or the Game Boy Advance version I should say, because I know for a fact that, well, generally speaking, it's about the fact I do apologize if my commentary is a little bit iffy sometimes, but that's just mainly because not only that I need to concentrate at some point, but as well as from that though, that I just seriously cannot wait for the likes of Mario Luigi Brothership is going to be almost approaching to its release. So either way, and I get the feeling there might be something up there, so we definitely need to... Oh, goody. Good thing there's a DK barrel just onto the, once we drop back down, either way. So, yeah, that's actually pretty swell. So, anyway, let's just go ahead and, climb for these little ropes and all that stuff, and something tells me there's yet another bonus area just right out there. But it does require a tag action, by the way, with Dixie Kong. So either way though, now once you've done so, then we're pretty much going to have to deal with some more, actually, kind of think about it, we need to now collect these stars now. So, and generally speaking, depending on what bonus area you go into, basically though, it gives you different tasks, ranging from find a token, and as well as the forms of collecting specific stars, and even defeat certain enemies, and all that stuff. So either way though, well, for the most part though, the first couple of bonus areas are pretty easy to find, whilst some of them can be pretty tricky sometimes. So either way, it may look like about the fact that the number counter is actually different for the DK Hero coins this time. So, because, well, generally speaking, despite the fact that it's been about 4 years ago since I actually have last played the original Super Nintendo version of Donkey Kong Country 2, because, well, I suppose I should probably save that particular topic until the next video anyway. So, of course, just like the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong Country 1 for the Game Boy Advance version, thankfully though, saving your game is actually not so much of an issue this time, because normally back on the Super Nintendo version, in order to be able to save the game, you need to meet up with the forms of Wanky Kong, and you have to pay for about 2 banana coins, or at first glance, it was actually for free. However though, after you save the game for free, it actually now costs 2 banana coins, which is a little bit convenient most of the time, but regardless of such though, I'm happy to report that the Game Boy Advance version did somehow manage able to, well, make the save game as the option for the pause menu this time, rather than just keep on spending on those ridiculous amount of banana coins and stuff like that. So, yeah, I fully appreciate about that change. So, anyway, so now we're pretty much done with the forms of the second level in the game so far, and because I just want to show you guys where the warp barrels are. So either way though, now we've actually done with that, so it may look like we need to go on to, actually, how do I supposed to go to the upper, oh, there we go. sometimes the actual layout can be confusing at times, unlike the defaults of how it does it in, well, the original Super Nintendo version to me, though. But regardless of everything else, though, we meet up with Cranky Kong right here. So it may look like about the fact that he now did manage able to say about the fact that something is about to happen, like, for instance, though, if you managed able to go onto the main menu selection right there, there is actually by defaults of quite a number of things, ranging from, of course, hints that just like the defaults of how it does on the previous game, that it actually tells you the defaults of specific parts and stuff like that. But as well as from that, there is also Cranky's surprise, which I'll talk more about that once we're able to spend quite a few banana coins onto specific hints right there. So just to ensure for the fact I just want to able to actually unlock most of these hints, because something tells me though, much like the defaults of how it does it in Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, if I'm assuming so anyway. Basically though, I believe we might able to actually come across into yet another collectible we can able to actually be more familiar with. So either way though, and generally speaking, I was about the fact that there's also the forms of Wanky's help as well. So generally speaking, there are two different methods of helping systems. So, and of course, just like the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, it actually tells you the forms of specific completionists you somehow got. Like, for instance, we've got the Gold Feather, in addition to the DK Hero Coin, and of course, we did somehow indeed find every single bonus areas. So, at least 2 of those levels so far anyway. So, but don't expect about the fact I'm probably not going to complete the world in one video, unfortunately, though. But that's just mainly because, as I stated before, that the entire playthrough of this particular version of the game is actually going to get much, much longer than in forms of how it does it on Donkey Kong Country 1 for the Game Boy Advance anyway, so you get the suggestions by that point. So anyways, let's go and open up these treasure chests, and oh, I did not meant to get hit right there, but thankfully though, we can able to retry as many times as we want, unlike in Donkey Kong Country Returns, not only for the Wii, but as well as the 3DS remake, and as well as the forms of the Switch version coming up, in addition to Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. They only have to deal with the bonus areas for 1 attempt, unless you lose a life. So either way though, but I very appreciate about the fact that we have the option to try it as many times as we want. So, oh, it's the 3rd treasure chest right there, which does contain the Crim Coin. So thankfully though, we did somehow succeed right there. So, but I digress. So, I get the... oh, dang it. I did not meant to go back in here, because I know for a fact that there was technically the warp barrel around here somewhere, but, oh, I have to get hit in order to able to leave the bonus area, so... yeah, nothing new from here, but either way though, at the very least we did somehow sort this out, so... oh, wait a second. Ah, that's what I was thinking about anyway, the DK Hero Coin. So, good thing I did somehow manage able to check on it though, despite the fact I accidentally got hit at the end right there. So, all thanks to the defaults, there's very springy, gremlins right there, so I suppose it really doesn't matter too much to the grand scheme of things, I should say. So, anyways, let's go ahead and get Dixie Kong out of the barrel. So either way, let's just go ahead and just try to be very cautious and be very careful at the same time. And as far as I'm aware, that's oh, we got ourselves another extra life. That's actually pretty swell. And there was something gonna be up here, at least as far as I'm assuming so anyway. And oh, I guess it's just an O, and that's it. So either way, nothing too groundbreaking or anything else like that. So. But anyway, let's just continue on here. Although, there's also another thing worth noting for, actually, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, generally speaking, though, unfortunately, though, we've actually come across into an issue recently, not just by the defaults of how the fact that, well, nothing wrong with the actual game that I suppose that Maxi has already done, back in, by the end of 2023, which appears to be Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure for the, PlayStation 2. Well, unfortunately, though, Shadow the Hedgehog, for whatever reason, decides to able to actually sell the game, and as a result, though, because he just thinks it's like, it's a one and only done thing, which as a result, though, well, to be fair though, at least I do honestly prefer Piglet's Big Game over the likes of Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure in my opinion, mainly because according to the forms of Tiana, alongside with the forms of Sonic as well, that I get the feeling that Piglet's Big Game does have a lot of nostalgia factor, at least for our parts, especially concerning for the fact that we used to have the GameCube version back then, but now we've actually got the PlayStation 2 version for the sake of consistency, and usually relatively speaking, I just, you know, very glad able to have the game again, but this time on the PlayStation 2 back then, especially concerning for the fact, you know, we did normally have the GameCube version back then, but of course the disc has been scratched heavily, and as a result it will not be playable anymore, not only on my Wii, but alongside with the GameCube itself as well. So generally speaking, yeah, it's a shame about the fact unfortunately we've no longer have Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure on the PlayStation 2 anymore, because obviously though, Shadow just somehow accidentally sells the game, and generally speaking that I don't think we can play that game again, mainly because no matter what though, I feel like that, well, it just feels kind of an easy kind of game, unlike the forms of how it does in Piglet's Big Game. But at the very least in Piglet's Big Game, it does offer some challenge, specifically though, bravest of them all kind of challenges, once you go back into certain stages again. Now once you're done with them, then obviously though you can able to actually wander around in the actual specific unique dream worlds, depending on what specific stages you go into. Well, that's just me anyway though, because you get the idea what Maxie has already on about it ever since in the past few months or so, but either way, yeah, I do apologize for that, folks. And, oh, nice, because that was yet another extra life. And I was really expecting to try to get that particular banana coins from over there, but beggars can't be choosers, I guess. Although, much like the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong Country 2 Super Nintendo version, there is actually a cool trick. You can able to actually grind as many of those banana coins as you could, but we'll save that topic for later. So anyway, so now we're done with that level, and there's the warp barrel right on top of the forms of, or just way above, the bonus barrel. So yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. So anyway, there might be some well hidden places that we can able to try to expect to try to find, but either way, let's grab these banana coins just in case. And grab another one by hitting the actual target while simply trying to deal with this massive drop. So, nicely done. And, also, as far as you probably already know, about the fact that, did you guys know that back in 2014, basically though, there was actually that particular Nintendo Direct that does manage to take place on the 5th of November. Yeah, apparently though, that particular Direct has been up for 10 years ago now, especially concerning for the fact that it's probably best if we let Blaze the Cat will mention more about it when she managed to come back on playing the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game as far as this is concerned. And in fact, what's even convenient though, that obviously though this game right here did came out the exact same year, as in not only the SpongeBob SquarePants movie game, but as well as the forms of the movie version of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie itself. So yeah, that's actually kind of interesting, alongside with the forms of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, and as well as Sonic Advance 3, and even the English version of Sonic Battle, and on top of all that stuff though, Mario Party 6 coming up, specifically in Japan and North America, because it wasn't until we had to wait for about a few months later for the European version of Mario Party 6 to come out until sometime in 2005, which kind of does the same thing for the likes of Mario Party 7 for the likes of 2005, alongside with 6 respectively. So either way, now as you can see, we actually picked up this particular book right there, which actually signifies about the fact that we do need to get those specific collectibles that we might be familiar with if you ever experienced the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country before. Like, for example, let's go back into, actually kind of think about it, let me just go ahead and quickly check on the menu. There's a scrapbook. And basically though, again, if you ever experienced the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country before, this actually signifies we're going to be getting those pictures. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool and everything. And generally speaking, I was about the fact that let's go back onto some stages again, just to ensure for the fact that we can able to actually try to find the camera item. So either way though, like for instance, we need to go back into this very first level in the game again, Although, hopefully this will be the final time we can able to experience this stage, just to ensure for the fact that we can able to actually grab, you know, another one of those collectibles we do need to get. And it's also required for able to try to reach up to, like, you know, 102%, because much like the forms of how it does it in Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance version, in order able to fully 101% in that game, is that you need able to actually obtain every single camera pictures and stuff like that. Like, usually you can able to actually find them in certain stages, whilst other times though you can able to actually obtain them if you do manage to complete certain tasks for certain mini games. So, and speaking of minigames though, alongside with these other objectives as well, basically though is about the fact that, well, again, it's probably best if we save that particular topic for later. So as you can see, we got ourselves the first camera item. So generally speaking though, now if you managed able to check on the forms of the scrapbook, for instance, basically though we can able to actually check what image or the picture we somehow got. However, the biggest difference is this time around though, if I recall correctly, I believe in the first Donkey Kong Country game on the Game Boy Advance version, I believe there was like, I don't know, 48 pictures you do need to get. In this game this time around though, there's only 40 this time, so I guess that makes a little bit more of a simple ways to do it, but either way though, let's check out Cranky's surprise. And it may look like something is actually in a cage, by the way. And it may look like, actually as it turns out, that we actually got ourselves an espresso right there, which is kind of interesting to say the least, or an ostrich I should say. So generally speaking, I was about the fact that what Cranky Kong is going to tell us this, is that we got ourselves the spare golden feather, which basically means that is where Espresso Racing decides to come in. And basically though, let's just go and do one race in particular, just to show you what that particular Espresso Racing plays out to be. And let's just say for the fact that, well, every time whenever you do manage to find a gold feather, then we can able to actually increase the specific status for your power-up status for your espresso. So I believe there's like 4 different status you can able to actually increase into. So let's just see what specific status they do have. Like they did say for the fact that we can able to increase the boost and the speed and also the flight. Actually, kind of think about it, there's like, yeah, there's only like 4 status. So either way, there's strength, speed, flight, and boost. Now, I've decided able to go for this format right here, like to, well, I'm sure about the fact that once we start the race, basically though, I somehow increased 2 speed, and 1 strength, and 1 boost, just to ensure for the fact that this is only just the beginning of the espresso racing. And as far as I'm aware, I don't think on the first flight, on the flights department, I don't think there's any flying involved until specifically later on. So anyway, so as you can see, we're about to be raced up against with the other 3 espressos right there. So we always ended up in lane 4, at least as far as I'm aware. So yeah, let's get to it with the first race in Espresso Race minigame. So yeah, basically, in order able to actually claim certain rewards, like for instance though, we do need able to claim one of the trophies in general. Basically though, we need to become first place, and then once you've done so already, then obviously though, you will able to miraculously try to get those specific rewards. And every once in a while though, we can able to actually come across into those weird yellow items we can able to come across into. I can assure you these are represented for like boosting and stuff like that. I mean, as you can tell, there's a lot of like boost pads you can able to actually like run onto, and that way you can able to get a short burst of speed here and there. So either way though, everything else checks out there, and it doesn't matter what time you somehow beat, you have to simply try to, you know, claim first place all in all. But there's also another minigame we can able to try out as well, but we do need to meet up with Funky Kong, much like the forms of how it does it in the first game. So anyway though, so it may look like that these 2 players seem to be up ahead right now, but we do need to pick up the pace and stuff like that, and hopefully though, as soon as we're able to make our way to the finish line, there we go, we somehow claim first place. So in addition to able to getting ourselves a glorious first trophy in the game already, But as well as from that though, there are some even more gifts that we somehow claimed, like most importantly, the DK Hero coin. So yeah, that's actually pretty swell. And just like defaults of how it does it on the Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Advance, basically though, every time if you do manage to complete those mini games or tasks, the game automatically saves. So either way though, that's actually pretty swell. So I suppose with that being said folks, is that we get endings up this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Game Boy Advance. It's that we're about to be finishing up every single aspect in terms of the first world in the game. So yeah, that's as far as we can able to say about it. So I'll see you guys then. Later fellas.